first win of the Spring Splits. Trick, and that's going to be lights out. 20 kills to 0.
OG go down once again in this match.
Everybody, and welcome to the home of the European LCS, coming to you live from Berlin, Germany. This afternoon, we're bringing you the final match of the cross-group phase before the teams fight to make their sprint towards playoffs. And as we saw just a few moments ago, Origen heading onto stage, the man of the hour setting himself up. Xpeke back in the lineup for a week now, and Origen, they have a showdown today up against Giants. Good afternoon, I'm James Stress O'Leary. Joining me at the analyst desk today is Mitch Krepel-Vorspals and long-standing coach of H2K, Neil Prolly. Hamad, welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us on this special Sunday of LCS.
Thanks, Sharks.
Yes, thank you, Sharks.
I can't speak Belgian right now, unfortunately, so we'll try. I'll try with some Welsh later. Well, with one day left in Week 7 and playoffs on the horizon, let's take a quick look at where the teams stack up. Yesterday, H2K secured first place over in Group B because they own the differential tiebreaker here. The win-loss difference is better for H2K, so despite having the same amount of series wins, they sit above the Unicorns of Love.
And isn't that beautiful? Probably. First place. Yeah, baby.
Yes, and I'm glad today I had it explained to me why we were actually in first place is that game differential, because, you know, as a coach, I should know that. And I'm glad that I was corrected. So.
And this is also not information that is totally not available to all coaches in the rule book, completely explained, found before the season. Gladly, we could reconcile there and we could really explain it to you. So
that's why I'm here today, you know.
Yeah. Why get bogged down in all of that when we can just look at the plays that happened yesterday? Because, you know, it was a 2-0 and H2K looked good, but from our perspective, there was still a couple of moments in the game where we were thinking, ooh, it still looks a little bit messy.
Yeah, like here is a quality H2K mad scientist Jankos play that people won't expect. He has GA and he has, you know, there's Kha'Zix R and everything to go invisible. So this is actually like, I'm gonna jump in here and I think I can bait a fight. So he jumps over the wall and then, you know, Misfits take this bait. And as an analyst, you guys aren't gonna really understand because you're not in the minds
We
of
don't
the
see
players.
the beauty, but we don't hear them talk. Either you follow the comms during the games, so you can actually tell us, was this H2 greed or H2 planned?
See, this is an H2 planned, I would say. H2 greed is a big problem we've had, and we're fixing it slowly. But this one was perfectly planned. I wouldn't consider this a big mistake. Maybe not a best macro play that we could repeat in other games.
Yeah.
I'll give you that, but this was... Yes, I heard the comms, this is set up. I have, you know, GA to survive and we'll bait a fight. Can we do this? Yes. And then Jankos, mad scientist, goes on.
We're joking a little bit, but other than this particular play, it looked very convincing from H2K. You guys prepped a full week to play the Misfits. Were you surprised by kind of how easy it was for you guys to take that 2-0?
I thought they would contest a lot more in the early game. They did get some dives off in game 1, and they played that really well. But then in game 2, they picked this like really, really scaling comp, and that's just not what Misfits have been doing well in the whole season. You know, you never looked at them and said, "Oh man, look how great they scale." You look at them and you're like, their early mid is really strong, and you know teams should prepare for that. So that's what we did. And then in game 2, they just had no early game to fight us, and we could just take the game over from there, and the game seemed pretty easy,
2-0 for H2K, not the only team that will pick up a 2-0. Roccat at the bottom of the tables, picking up their second 2-0 of the week, which, you know, important for them to stay out of the relegation battle, but also the first time they've gone 2-0 on the week since the 2015 summer split. So Roccat, then they took down Vitality. It looked a lot better from Roccat than we thought it would.
Yeah, it's also a good indicator that if you're in a lower tier team, it's best to play scrappy and it's best to play team fight. Because Vitality, by all intents and purposes, should have won this series. Like, they had a major option to win that 1-3-1 split push game with the Cannon. They refused to play it out correctly after getting a massive lead. And you could just tell that they weren't experienced enough with this quite complex playstyle in the 1-3-1. I think it's much better, and I hope that Giants and Origen as well learn from this today and just play scrappy team fights.
Exactly, and now we're going to have to look at how the wins yesterday actually affect the bottom, because the scuffle between the bottom 4 teams in cross-group play is reaching that finale today with Origen taking on Giants. And of course, both teams played on Thursday, a difficult day for both teams for many different reasons. Of course, Giants looking superb in the beginning of game 1 and 2, which ultimately would be remade, and Giants coming out of that day with a loss. Looking a lot better. Jankos yesterday in PGL, though, said, their early game for Giants looks pretty strong. Is that something that the rest of H2K and yourself actually agree with, probably?
Yeah, so this is one of the times where Jankos says something, but really he's just repeating what I say. Because, yeah, I would say Memento is a really good jungler, and he's actually the big driving force behind Giants. And in the meta right now, where it's really like carry jungler focused, junglers set the pace for the early game and mid game. So it's really important that they have this kind of not just caller, but someone who is kind of just good direction in the game. He's kind of always making plays and moving around the map well.
I wonder, out of these 10 players, if anybody else was to be called a shot caller, who would we look at? Maybe on the opposing side. I mean, Peke back in the lineup. It's been a week now. Where do we see Origen going? Because there have been clear improvements.
I mean, we saw some progression. I think they at least were doing some proactive plays. Whether they were all working, no. There was a couple good teleports, but then Peke forced a bit too hard on some plays. But I actually want to change the discussion here. And now that we have a pristine, solid league analytical mind on our desk and probably next to me, probably if you were a coach, of one of these lower tier teams, what would you work on the most? Like, what is like the first 2 weeks entail in terms of coaching?
Well, I would say for me, you would focus on what's going to happen the most, which is every game's going to be early game, like, let's be honest. So that would obviously be my first tackle point, because you would have that every single scrim. And it would pretty much be the point in the game up until maybe like first tower goes down. That's a good, segment that you can section off that and call that the early game. And that's where you just focus on like how teams are communicating. Like, are you guys actually making the like high percentage plays, like ganking lanes with CC or ganking snowball lanes? Pretty easy stuff until people are comfortable with it. And then, section off and move it on like, how do we take down the next tier 2 turrets and stuff like that.
Okay.
I'm really interested in this conversation. Luckily, we got some time throughout the day and in PGL later on in the day. I'm being told, though, we're getting closer to Champion Select. So before we get there, I just want to get a few quick predictions. And who do you think is going to win and why?
Oh, it's a tough one. I still think Giants early game, and the fact that they're playing against players in the opposite of their role, kind of who are not much better, that they can actually just snowball as a team. I think Expecke will bring some shot calling, but player for player, I think Giants actually have the edge.
Yeah, I would say like maybe player for player, it's like pretty close, I would say. I am team Naehyun for real. He has such an insane losing streak that it reminds me of me a lot. So,
well, he beat it in terms of games. He beat it. He still has the match losing streak, of course.
But now it's his time to have his shortest losing streak, and I want him to do that today.
Pick 6 mid?
Yeah, something like that. Something just amazingly meta. But I will give the edge to Giants for sure. I think they'll win it over OG. I think, Memento makes a lot more proactive plays, and when you're playing 2 lower tier teams, like the proactive team, as long as they're not throwing, it's going to have a really big advantage in the match.
Well, analyst has Kavit for Giants. I'm glad I removed myself from predictions because I always get it wrong. So the teams are almost ready for Champion Select. I'm giving over lobby invite rights to the caster desk.
Thank you very much, Stress. Hello, everybody. I'm Trevor Quickshot Henry. Joining me today is the spectacularly splendiferous Andrew Vedieste.
I'm blushing, good sir. Thank you very much.
Nice. The makeup's covering up a little bit, luckily. Let's take a look at the rosters. I'm going to try get this right today. Starting on the blue side, winning the coin toss, it's Giants with Flaxish in the top lane, Memento in the jungle, Knight in the mid lane, HQ80C hustling their support, and Coach Lozark returning to stage. Let's see what Giants can do. The analyst desk predicting they'll be victorious.
Well, they're going to have to go through Origen, who will be on the red side of the ref for our first game, with Sartorius in the top lane, Wisdom as their jungler, their mid laner, Naehyun. On AD carry is Tabs, their support, Expecke, and their coach, Lida.
All right, so jumping into picks and bans, reminding everybody that we are on patch 7.4. It is not the patch you are playing live at home. That will come next week. And Oriana disabled for the EULCS for this last series of week 7, for this last series of cross-group play. Let's set up the tone again of what these teams are fighting for. Origen, 2 series losses behind Vitality.
Yep.
All right? So with no wins on the board, Vitality with 2 wins on the board, that's who Origin's trying to catch. Giants, on the other hand, with that very unfortunate situation against Vitality, that means they are 1 series behind Roccat. So let's see who can pick up that win, get themselves closer to 4th place in their group, Vedius.
Yep, the series really did, or the situation really did suck for Giants, but now they have an opportunity to get themselves some points on the board against a struggling Origin. And off the bat, we already see some focus towards Sartorius. That Gragas ban definitely directed towards him. We have seen a lot more resurgence of the Gragas in the jungle. And we've also been seeing a lot of shifts in the red side bans, which is always great to see. Camille has been left open a lot more recently. Rengar's getting through the pick and ban as well.
And despite how well Flaxish played that Shen, running the risk of giving it away to first rotation Origin, maybe something to remove it off the pool. Varus taken away, so what is still up and available? The obvious ones of Rengar and Camille come to mind, but we've been seeing that the Rengar at least slipping through a little bit more frequently over this week.
I think the big pick right now is actually Malzahar. Just as I say it, Origin take it off the board. The Lulu ban indicated to me that Giants wanted to try and prioritize it. Now, Jhin raises in value fairly significantly this early on. Graves is still a pretty powerful pick that's available. Rengar and Camille, as we were just discussing, all very good picks. And Giants have a lot of freedom. The big thing for Origin, though, is that they get themselves 2 big power picks as well. That's the advantage you have of banning away or leaving more of these big picks open.
All right, so in terms of what priority Giants put on the table, it will be a Jace locked in. So we need to keep an eye on how well that's going to perform. Knight has not yet, has played that once this split. Actually, I think played it on Thursday. I'll double check that one in a moment. And Origin, on the other hand, they're going to lock in the Renekton and the Elise with Graves available. Wisdom going back to that pick that he actually had a pretty good showing on. Early game-wise, a lot of ganks, a lot of impact. Wisdom is a jungler that has progressively been trying to make more plays happen, and that's a champion that can enable that.
I like the fact that we are seeing this come out from Origin, the fact that they are trying to take advantage of early leads. When we think back throughout the split, Origin aren't unknown to these early game advantages. They have been able to get them, but then they don't have to translate that into anything. And by bringing Pekka in, the hope was that they have that knowledge, that backbone to guide the team in a direction that will enable them to use this early game lead that they're hoping to build with this draft. Now, Giants, they've already indicated that this Nautilus is going to be going up into the top lane with the Karma support. No AD carry has actually been locked in yet. Jhin is still available. A reason for this is actually the high increase in popularity of Ezreal being used as a good pick into the Jhin. And already we're seeing it come out early on from Origin. So now Giants, they may very well shift their priority. I'm thinking over towards an Ashe to set up for engages, good follow-up with the Karma lane as well. A lot of availability.
Yeah, and I mean, that Ezreal was very high priority for Origin against Roccat on Thursday when they were red side, played it both times. With both Jhin and Ezreal available, let's see if it gets banned in ban phase 2, which is where we find ourselves. Nahyun locks in the Rise. Gonna see what he can do on that. 2 games played, and you know, not the greatest performances, but Nahyun is one of these players that is consistently trying to make things happen. That's a champion that can be game-changing, especially with Renekton and Elise.
I think that you add an element of scaling with the Rise. I wonder whether or not Origin are going to try and pick a powerful pushing bottom lane, or whether or not they're going to allow it to be more towards the scaling. The fact that they banned away the Ashe implies to me that they're actually looking towards getting themselves that Ezreal for themselves, trying to force Giants onto this Jhin pick. And on top of that, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Cassio or a Syndra ban come out from Origin next to make sure that Nahyun has a fairly positive lane that he can scale nicely into, and then they can Origin can focus on playing around the top side while they have a good scaling bottom half of the map.
All right, let's play safe and steady then, right? Mid lane and bottom lane. Alistar was banned away. Pekka played that as well to mixed success. A couple of decent engages, but not the greatest. And it will be a Jhin removed from the pool, so not targeting that mid lane. But again, even more raising the value of Ezreal. Maybe that's not the great wording, but what do Giants consider? Do they take Ezreal away? Is it even worth it? Just give away something like Sivir, I suppose?
The thing is, if you take Ezreal away, you're really thinning out the champion pool for AD carries, right? For optimal AD carries. When you've already locked in a Karma for yourself, you really want something that can have the pushing power. So I'm thinking for Giants that they're going to shift towards someone like the Sivir. It would add a lot of value. Fascinating that they've actually decided to ban away the Camille when you think that Origen have already logged in their top laner. You could go towards the support. There's always that possible risk of it for Peke. We saw it work out very well for Mickey on Splice. He actually made a lot of effective plays with it. But still a lot of respect coming out from Giants.
And of course, targeting a player who was a mid laner and who famously was playing a lot of mid lane solo queue before Xpeke returned to Origen. So maybe Giants smell something fishy there that they wanted to get rid of. ADC Ezreal for Tabs, ADC Roll for Hikyu, playing the Ziggs. I actually forgot about it
Always
as well.
forget about Ziggs,
Yeah.
right? It's that champion that when you think of AD carries, Ziggs is not the first champion that you go to. But this is going to be a very powerful pushing lane for Giants in the bottom lane. They've actually... I like the AP because you have gone with the Jace who will be going into the mid lane. This was highlighted earlier with the Nautilus going top. So you have a nice balance in terms of damage. But Giants, they're setting up for a fairly solid teamfight composition. You have the option to put the Jace into a side lane, so you have the ability to set up for a 1-3-1 should you want it. But in terms of pushing power, Giants are actually set up for a lot of success. The big one that they're going to struggle with in the top side, which is where I feel Origen need to look to try and set up that early pressure.
All right, so pressure onto Flaxish's Nautilus. Let's see if Wisdom can actually make the ganks work this time around. Last time we played that Elise, he and Sartorius were not necessarily on the same page. If I recall correctly, Sartorius was running a Nautilus top lane, came in for a gank and was unable to kind of get the dredge line to follow up on the Cocoon. So now we need to see Wisdom and Sartorius working together to punish Flaxish. What do you make of this Nami lock-in for Peke? Bit of an old school Ezreal Nami lane. A long time ago.
Very powerful lane, especially in the early levels. You have the ability to go super aggressive onto the Ziggs, who the pushing power very early on for Ziggs isn't really that optimal. It's once he's completed the Lost Chapter where his pushing potential really starts to shine. And so Origen's bottom lane can look to be aggressive in those early levels. That's the small window that they have to try and net some kind of lead before that Ziggs and Karma can get that first back under theirs.
Okay. And that's a lane that has actually been working for Origen. Peke and Tabs have looked better and better every single game they've played and coordinating well. So we've got some interesting team compositions here. Origen with some scaling in the bottom half, maybe with that Ezreal and Ryze. Some early game with Ezreal, Elise and Renekton. Whereas Giants team comp just feels a little bit more well-rounded. They've got some poke, they've got some frontline, peel as well. And some pretty easy engage with Nautilus. Let's see who can use their team compositions better. This is obviously the two bottom teams in their respective groups doing battle for the last time here in cross-group play.
Yep, this is a big match for both these teams, really fighting for survival to try and secure that fourth place spot.
Yeah, fourth place safety, that is what is on the line. And what Giants and Origen want to try and get closer towards. We're loading up onto the Rift for game one in this best of three. It'll be the only series today on Sunday. Extra day.
Now, Quickshot, I know you're excited because your last Origen game was a doozy, one could say.
163 minutes of gameplay in a best of three.
Every shoutcaster's dream, I would argue.
Between Origen and Rocket. And yes, you know, it was interesting. It was very interesting indeed. Origen, the only game they won that series, took 75 minutes, and it was to a lack of sort of mid-game shot calling, many Barons.
And that's why I bring it up, because what we're looking for from Origen is more decisiveness. We want to see better setup. We want to see more planning from Origen, because it feels like they have the ability, especially with their composition, to net themselves an early lead. They have the tools in their kit to set up for success. But what we want to see from them is then their ability to use that possible lead in order to get objectives, move into the base of Giants.
Just make it sound so simple, Vedius.
I do.
Just use your composition to get an advantage. Then after you've got the advantage, press it into the mid-game, then get a good mid-game, and then close out. I mean, look, that sounds clean. We need to see if Origen can do it. And Origen need to try to deal with Giants who, you know, when they played against Vitality, a little bit of a cheeky fight here. And when Giants did play against Vitality, in that game 1 and 2, before the remake, before the series sort of reset in many ways, Giants had a very good early game.
They did.
They were controlling, they were commanding. They outplayed Vitality many ways. And it is just unfortunate that that remake happened. And then obviously the team was unable to bounce back.
And Memento, as an individual, we heard it on the analyst desk, and he's a player that we've been highlighting a lot because of his ability to just be in the right place at the right time. I think back to the Giants vs H2K series where it was always Memento in both games, getting the head start onto Jankos, already being there to get the counter gank and actually winning out on the 2 versus 2 with the Knight in twice in that series. And this guy is someone that is very good at tracking the enemy jungler, and it has a very good understanding of where he needs to be on the map. And when you look at the minimap, we've been talking a lot about this top lane. I wouldn't be surprised to see him make his way up top for a preemptive early gank top.
All right, before we get to the top lane, Xpeke takes a very big trade from the Ziggs Karma lane. Hustlin and Hikyu continuing to push forward. Taking a glance at the Keystone Masteries. Not seeing anything super surprising here. And Tabs is going to continue farming up. Just trying to apply pressure. Hustlin landing that Soul Flare and trying to move forward. Catching a quick glance of Sartorius moving into ward, and obviously his lane opponent Flaxish. Flaxish has been playing very, very well in the last couple of weeks, right? He is a guy that was relatively quiet and not one of the biggest performers, but has steadily grown on a team that is struggling, so it's more difficult to shine.
Flaxish, he did have a great game 1 in that series versus Vitality. His Shen was very impactful in what it was able to provide for the team. He actually had a very impressive scoreline with the 0, 1, and 15 on that Shen. And it's just great to see that from an individual who not very many people knew a lot about. I knew him from back when I was casting the UK scene a long time ago. Spent a long time in the amateur scene, and he came in with few expectations, I would argue, an individual who not many people really know what he would bring, and slowly, over time, he is growing more into the role. He is better understanding his role in the team and how he can impact the map at this level of play.
I was keeping my eyes there on Wisdom, sitting with that Krugs. Too low level, too early to dive, especially with all of the summoners available, but looking at the top lane, Memento onto a Renekton early. I guess Memento does have damage from that Graves, but not going to go for it. He also recalls both junglers mirroring one another. Moving into the opponent's jungle and just clearing out the camps.
So you can see the Wisdom, he's actually invested a lot of vision towards the bottom half of Giants' jungle because he knows how aggressively both Peke and Tabs are playing. They're pushing, they're overextending, they want to make sure that they're safe, especially with an Infernal Dragon on the board. So Wisdom just providing that support and making sure that they can play as aggressively as they wish.
All right, Hustler and Hikyu still being pushed in. 25 CS to 38. Hikyu, of course, on the Ziggs needs a couple of levels before that pick really starts to come into its own and is able to deal with the shove. And Wisdom's going to walk straight over this ward. So a couple of pings from Giants onto his position. And I guess now we start to anticipate plays from Wisdom and Memento. Where can they find opportunities? Because every single one of the solo lanes is terrifying when you look at the CC and how the damage combination can come down. Nautilus plus Graves is very scary, and Memento, he's going to come in behind Tabs here.
He's looking to set up a dive bot, or a gank bot even, but he will get spotted out by that ward that's in the river. Origen, good understanding of knowing where the vision is. They realize, okay, we've lost that ward on the Krugs. We don't actually have a good idea of where the Graves is right now, so let's drop a ward in the river. And now Wisdom, he's looking for a possible dive drop. The problem for Wisdom right now is that Flaxish is a very dangerous individual to dive when he's on this Nautilus. If you are going to be moving to that side of the map, you either want to be pressuring the turret or you want to make sure that Flaxish is know enough to guarantee a successful dive. But look at where Memento is. He's reading this play perfectly.
All right, Wisdom, where's the cocoon? There's support from Memento. Wisdom repels up into the air. Sartorius tanking up the turret. Now Origen are running for their lives. Run warp to safety. Nahyun saves Wisdom's life.
Fantastic roam from Nahyun. He realizes that the dive is happening. He moves up to support both the jungler and the top laner of Origen. They see the dive coming. And then he's there with his ultimate ready in case things go wrong. Prepping it in advance.
Look at the cost. Look at the cost. 2 flashes. Wisdom and Sartorius. Nahyun as well. Losing a little bit of pressure in that lane. He'll take some chip damage as Knight is shoving it in. But that's a level of coordination and communication that is now starting to trickle through a little bit more for Origen as the weeks have rolled on since Peke's return.
but you can see why it was a dangerous dive for Origen. At least wanted to try and take advantage of her great early ability to set up these dives. But the problem you have is Nautilus has a lot of crowd control. He was about to hit level 6, and all he needed was a couple of minions to really turn that gank around. And then Memento, just reading the play so effectively, he just came up through the lane. He was like, if Wisdom is going to gank anywhere, it is more likely than not going to be in the top lane. So he just reacts accordingly, and they're able to dissuade that. A very aggressive early dive.
Yeah, very well played by Memento, reading the situation. Looks like he's behind a large amount of CS. It's 20 at the moment. That's around 300 gold. And I think it's interesting that Origen have already farmed themselves up 1,000 gold advantage, plus 20 CS in the top lane, plus 12 in the bot lane. Obviously, Wisdom got a couple of those big monster camps. But it is what you expect from the team composition, isn't it? When you look at some of these lanes and you look at how Giants, they kind of want to scale a little bit more into the mid game.
Renekton is always going to be pushing in against the Nautilus. The Ryze versus Jace is often fairly even, very back and forth. Because you're going into a mage going into a melee, you always have to be careful about trading. Because in extended trades, the reality is that the Jace will be able to do more damage simply because he has more damage on his basic attacks, which Nahyun can't match. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, so aggressive play from Tabs and Peke, really utilizing the early power spike that they have. But now that the Lost Chapter has been complete, you'll start to see Tabs and Peke really struggle to be as aggressive as they wanted to before.
All right, Wisdom actually walks straight over that control ward, eats an accelerated shock blast, and won't be able to kill that one out. Did not control right click, or shift right click rather. Attack move.
Now I like this movement from Memento. Again, reading Wisdom's jungle pathing, realizing that the blue buff is going to be spawning soon. And he's actually able to steal it.
He stole the blue buff?
And it comes back from this ward that Memento had placed down earlier on. Really good setup from Giants, and this is going to make the bottom lane so much more difficult for Origen to deal with.
I did not think that was going to happen, but Wisdom didn't have Smite available, and he just didn't get the burst. The Origen army is out in force, voting for Xpeke and the boys as they get to 10 minutes in the game. That CS advantage, gold advantage, still a little bit relevant, but now with blue buff, Hiku can just shove with bouncing bombs all day long.
But look at the vision investment from Giants, because they've already identified, we want to make sure that we have control over this Infernal Drake. We have pushing lanes down bottom. Now that Jace has actually picked up the serrated Dirk, he can start to play more aggressively into the Ryze, and he can keep pushing that Ryze underneath his turret. And Nautilus, he's doing fine. He's staying alive against this Sartorius. They dissuaded that early dive, which means that Giants' next objective is going to be this Infernal Drake.
All right, very cheeky entrance into the pit here for Wisdom.
Wow.
The Spiderlings, though, just walked in. See a warning ping from Giants in the back of the pit, but nobody else is responding. Mega Inferno Bomb is on cooldown, and Knight not actually making a position towards the river. So Wisdom should be able to secure this dragon uncontested. Very, very creative pathing to get around some of the vision, and obviously Memento's going to get spotted out here in the left quadrant. So well played by Origen.
It's actually fascinating how Giants allowed that to happen from Wisdom, because he walked over all of this vision that Giants had through the jungle. They even pinged him out. They identified where he was. Might even moved over to see what he was doing. And Wisdom was still able to steal away the dragon. So Giants just conceding that objective. Rather than try and force a fight, rather than risk fighting this early on, they've just said, for now, we'll just let them have that first Infernal Drake.
Cocoon catches onto Memento. Where's the support? No damage to follow up. Down in the bottom lane, defensive flash from Peke. Gets him out of range of that Mega Inferno Bomb, but he takes another bouncing bomb to the face. And Wisdom just trying to close the distance, I feel, quicker. Didn't manage to make it over the wall.
I love this vision from Giants. They are reading Wisdom so well. Every time he's trying to set up an early gank, he's constantly being spotted out. And this is why Memento has had so much praise, because he is just so good at tracking the enemy jungler. And on Graves, you have to respect that he has a lot of early game damage, especially if you walk near that wall.
Yeah, it's very important to note. We're 12 minutes in, getting to that anyway, and the early game Elise not having any level of impact. Wisdom not having an opportunity. He's been spotted by wards, as you mentioned. His tower dive was thwarted by good play by Memento. But to Wisdom's credit, he has secured a dragon for Origen. Well, Tabs and Peke, I mean, that was a blue buff Ziggs they've got to deal with. And in the mid lane, Knight has got to deal with Nahyun and Wisdom. He's going to be able to just cleanse his way to safety.
You can see the difference the Lost Chapter makes to this matchup, though.
Lost Chapter plus blue.
Yep, that really helps too. The fact that you can just spam bombs all the time. And Ezreal and Anami really don't have the wave clear to be able to match it. So that tower is going down fast, but now Wisdom is trying to answer the push.
All right, Realm Warp coming up from Nahyun. Wisdom's going to look to find some CC. Where's the Cocoon? That was a little bit sloppy. Rune Prison onto Hustlin. He's got underneath the tower, and Hiku running low on mana. Flash for flash. One more auto, maybe all that's needed. The explosive minefield will not get a pop. Mega Inferno Bombs on cooldown. Body block plus summon a heal. And Origen survive by the skin of their teeth.
Giants are able to turn around a gank from Origen as they desperately try to hold on to this tier 1 down in the bottom lane. But thanks to a quick response from Giants, they're now going to be able to get this first objective, and they're going to reclaim control over the gold lead.
Tower first blood goes the way of Giants, and CS advantages now don't mean a thing. Good reactive play here from Giants. They have a team composition that is slightly weaker in the early game, and they're surviving it comfortably, swimmingly, and even with a small advantage in gold.
But it's another thing that we have to highlight, which we've seen multiple times throughout the bottom 4 teams in the LCS, which is the plan is good. The fact that Hiku has no mana, Hustlin doesn't really have the CC to stop the gank from happening. It is a good time from OG to make this roam and force the gank. The problem they have is that Tabs and Xpeke are too low. They've been chunked out from being constantly forced underneath their tower, and the damage from Wisdom and Nahyun combined with their synergy together just wasn't stacked as effectively as they would have liked. So they end up feigning the gank and they end up getting forced back.
And that just means Giants take control of the game. There's a bunch of control wards in Giants' inventory. Giants have had very good vision already. You can still see a couple of those control wards on the mini-map. Now Giants are just going to look to push their vision line forward, play a little more aggressively. And, you know, a running theme over the last couple of weeks is these like high complexity sort of damage style comps, a la Origen, Renekton, Elise, Ryze, etc., versus the tank top laner and the slightly simpler style of play. Tank on front line, find target with CC, kill target. And that's what Giants are going to be very comfortable with because their team comp supports that so well.
The Jace may be a little bit harder to execute in the team comps, but I feel that what we've been seeing from Knight in recent weeks means that he should still be able to succeed with that. And now I like this movement from Giants as they look to push down the mid tower.
Yeah, a lot of damage. Memento uses his ultimate just to try poke out Peke. Tidal Wave is available, but like, how do Origen try to deal with this? They've got Ziggs poke, Karma poke, Jace poke, and they've got to try to defend their tower. Luckily, this time they do, but it is just a matter of time before Giants keep knocking that one over.
And it's really important that we highlight how good the response from Giants was when they stopped that dive happening from Wisdom, because imagine if that gank is successful. The Renekton is able to get the kill down onto Flaxish. Now Flaxish is at such a deficit that he can no longer hold his own against Sartorius. He's now putting all this pressure down on the top side, freeing up Wisdom to help out his bottom lane. It doesn't happen because of a good read from Memento that allows them to get through what should have been a very rough early game into a more stable mid game where the Ziggs can now start to exert all this pressure.
You mentioned the word pressure. Wisdom wants to try put some pressure onto Knight. Let's look for the Cocoon. Very good edge of Knight on Knight. And he's got Cleanse and Flash available. All right, that's at least a spell shield popped. Wisdom still chilling in the bush. Get some s'mores, build a tent. Get a chair. Chill out, bro.
He's been there for a while now. He may have got a book out.
Yeah, he can borrow Ryze's book. Oh, it wouldn't let him, actually. Ryze wouldn't let him read that.
No.
A lot of power, and Wisdom just going to back away. Wasted time. Knight playing that one very safely. Also had Cleanse, also had Flash. And the optimistic play kind of flounders as now Origen have got themselves a numbers advantage towards the Infernal Drake. Wisdom, oh, Memento, don't walk into the Cocoon. He gets caught out, flashes away, plus the dash and the collateral damage. Tidal Wave is also not going to snipe him out, and Memento survives. First blood still not secured.
We praise Memento and Giants for their immaculate vision control, and then he goes and face checks a brush. Wisdom very quick to punish him for that. They've now forced the jungler back from Giants, which means the Origen are in a better position to go for this objective, but look at the ultimates that have been used. Peke's is down, Tabs is down, and Giants, they're still feeling confident.
Aqua Prison locks nobody in place. Origen, they're going to trigger the Infernal Drake, but there's support coming from the North River. Sartorius and Flaxish making their way in. Dragons going low, Mega Inferno Bomb, stolen! Giants get their first Dragon. EQ is sniping away Origen's objectives.
Giants gets away with the Dragon for free. Wisdom does not appreciate the amount of damage that Ziggs is able to throw out. A very swift steal, but actually look at the goal difference. Origen have managed to claw it back even though they are at a tower deficit. They are still doing very well on an individual basis, especially in the top lane. Sartorius, he's able to hold on to a very solid CS advantage. So even though Giants are playing the map very well and they are netting a lot of these neutral objectives, it is Origen that is still holding on and fighting back.
But when you factor in the headroom of the team composition and some scaling, who do you prefer? I mean, look at what EQ's doing to Pekka and Tabs. Collateral damage also thrown down from Memento. He's just firing that on cooldown, it feels like.
Thing is, that's going to force them back now. And with Ziggs, you won't be able to stop this tower from going down. There's going to be another neutral objective going in the favor of Giants. And they are playing this slow, methodically, and effectively.
The early game potential from Origen is now well and gone. We're comfortably moving towards mid-game. And it just feels like Giants have kind of been the... I don't have a great word for this, but like sort of like the smarter or the more able to read the state of the game in terms of their decision-making. And that's allowing them to actually pick up this advantage.
But we see this from Giants because they're now not being outclassed by a lot of the other teams in Group A. I mean, we think about it like Misfits, G2, Fnatic. On an individual basis, a lot of Giants' problems have come from the fact that they unable to get to this point because of how much they fall behind on an individual level. They struggle, they get outclassed and they get outplayed, but when Giants get through a safe laning phase, when they are free to play their style, this is where you start to see a lot of their strength.
Yeah, and I'm disappointed to not see Wisdom's Elise show up. I had really high hopes when it was locked in. It was a first rotation along with that Renekton. Both of them 0-0-0, and outside of a CS advantage for Sartorius, that duo has not really earned its worth just yet. You know, when you have that high priority on two particular champions, fighting over some vision in River, as you can see, Wisdom, and Sartorius starting to leave the top lane, but Renekton needs to make a play happen before Nautilus becomes more valuable.
Now, what we have to remember for Origen is that Ezreal will still scale well. He'll have a potent spike in the mid game along with the Rise. Once he's completed the Rod of Ages, once he's upgraded, or once he's got his fully stacked tier and turned it into the Seraph's Embrace, that's when Origen will still have a strong team fighting power. They can set up a 1-3-1 as well. Renekton is always going to be fine in a side lane, and Rise will eventually be able to duel the Jinx. So there's no reason as to why Origen are completely out of the game yet. It's just the Giants have more control of the map, so they're in a better position to set up for these objectives.
All right, so as we see Hustlin and Flaxish looking to combo down Sartorius. Total damage dealt to champions. Hustlin having a great time of it, working in his favor. Sartorius has used the Dominus. There's support coming from Memento as well. And Sartorius clears out the minion wave. Very clever to buy time and to survive. And that means Memento can't get the dive down. Expected fancies his chances. Getting a little bit of a slow from that Tidecaller's Blessing. And Origen, all right, they're looking to pick up their first tower of the game. It looks like it will be traded. Or maybe this is a 2-for-1, Vedius.
Good movement from Origen. They realized, look, we can't defend that top tower. The Ziggs has moved up there. But what this has done is opened up the mid lane because Knight, he was actually forced back from the aggressive plays of Tabs and Peke, which means that they can now move towards this tower. Then it's going to be difficult for them to close it out now that Giants have been able to respond. But look at what Giants are doing in the top side as well. They've actually decided to push. Now they're going for a dive.
Okay, Realm Warp onto Knight is going to be the target. He's able to flash over the wall. It's Flaxish that gets cocooned. Nahun's running him down. Depth charge buys time. And the Dredge line gets Flaxish to safety. Origen get their tower. It's 21 minutes and no champion has died yet until Peke gets sniped. The collateral damage is huge. Origen get the tower. They lose their captain.
First blood at 21 minutes. What was a very slow, methodical game from Giants. They are now able to finally capitalize on Origen, just overextending a little bit too much to try and get that kill down onto Flaxish. Now Giants, they're in the better position to make the map movement through the mid and very quickly take that tier 2 tower down.
And there we go. Giants once again regain control.
And just look at your minimap. You can see that Giants had a choice between pushing for that tier 2 in the top or trying to go for this collapse. They felt like the Origen would overcommit to this objective. The Mega Inferno Bomb even comes out to clear out the minion wave, and now Giants are in a prime position to get this collapse down. Origen can pass through the river, but Mentor has too much damage for Xpeke to be able to get away with his life, and that enables Giants to then very swiftly move through the mid lane.
Yeah, Edge of Night completed for Memento, plus Warrior Enchant, Ghostblade, and Edge of Night for Knight. Lichbane completed for Hiku, so also going to be taking down those towers even quicker. And it's a Trinity Force Mirror Mana for Tabs right now. So item spikes continuing to grow, continuing to escalate. And yeah, the game is still relatively even metrics-wise, but it's Giants that have got the advantage.
Now if you're Giants, what you want to do is preferably, you'd actually rather have Knight off down in this bottom lane and putting threat or pressure. Uzi goes in for an exchange.
It does indeed. The cleanse is already used. Knight, no flash available. Nahyun used his exhaust, and this will at least be the tower for Origen. That will be the third of the game. Just one behind Giants.
So the reason why I think it would have been better to have Flaxish up in the top lane was Nautilus is harder to dive. His wave clear is slightly better, and he should be able to hold better in the 1 versus 2, and you really want Giants to be putting pressure on this tier 2 in the bottom lane because the dragon is alive, and preferably you'd want Flaxish to TP in for any kind of dragon play, and so you want to be playing towards an area where Knight is better apt to then quickly respond to the dragon play. So they decided not to do that. They've kept Knight up in the top lane, and I wonder what Giants are going to be able to do to try and push their lead even further, because it becomes a difficult point at this time in the map, right? The map is very open for Giants.
Yep.
They have to have really good vision control because the pick potential is still very potent from Origen.
Yeah, and I mean, you've talked about the dragon. It's 24 minutes into the game, and there's also a Baron on the table. Earlier in the week, Origen got more Barons against Roccat than they have the entire split, right? So in one best of 3, they got 8 Barons and still lost, for the record. 7 Barons all weeks leading up, and Giants with their tanky Nautilus frontline and all of the DPS to back it up, they could look for Baron. Look at the vision. Gonna go for the tower now as Origen are prioritizing that dragon. Looks like Nahyun's gonna buy some time. True Shot Barrage to try clear out the minion wave. And that's gonna be a very good escape from Nahyun. Realm Warp into Hourglass does it safely. Now Nahyun's the target. He gets pulled backwards as the tower goes down. Origen, they're late, they're sloppy. It's messy to the fight. Giants get themselves 2 and a tower, and they're not done yet.
See, now this is why you can keep Knight up in the top lane, because the moment he gets that push on, the collapse from Giants is so swift that they may be able to take an inhibitor right now.
Xpeke gets caught by the anchor, pulled into the Giants squad. Defensive dash away from Tabs as that arcane shift buys him a few seconds, and a clean inhibitor for Giants.
I love this play from Giants. They knew exactly how they were going to punish Origen. Wisdom, he moved towards the dragon. There was a ward in the pit from Giants, recognizing, okay, Wisdom started that dragon, we can guarantee a numbers advantage. Flaxish, just push out the bottom lane, send your TP up top. And look, you can see the setup has come. Hiku and Helsling, they pushed out mid, they started making that rotation through the jungle, and there's no way in which Origen are going to be able to defend this because it's 5 versus 2. The response from Origen just is not fast enough. And once they're able to take Nahyun out of the fight, then it's just easy pickings to the rest of Giants.
Yeah, did that tidal wave also fall short, it looked like? Didn't find its target for Xpeke, and this Nami pick as well, not paying off. I mean, the champions that are having limited to no impacts right now are Renekton, Elise, and Nami. 25 minutes in, no kills for Origen. They're now 3,000 gold down. They've got supers to deal with in the top lane. And Giants can just play this one safe.
The thing is now, if you're Giants, all you have to do is you can put Knight or Flaxish in the middle lane. You send your tower sieging duo anywhere that you want, and it becomes super easy for them to just take down turrets. As now Knight in a 1v1.
Well, it's going to be a 3-on-1 against Sartorius. Redemption's going to buy a little bit of time here to heal up Knight's life. And Sartorius continues to run away. Look at the minion wave being cleared out by True Shot Barrage. And Origen, they're going for Barons.
Sartorius is just buying time. Look, there are 2-3 members of Giants still in the bottom half of the map. Flaxish, he's going to face check.
Okay, Pekka and Flaxish, they're trading as Nahyun and Tabs come into support. Mementos caught between a Nahyun and a Wisdom. Overload after overload. Repel from Wisdom. Sinks his fangs into the venomous bite. Memento finally goes down. Origen get their first kill of the day. And Knight and Flaxish running out. Sartorius, no dominus available to him. Gets a slice and not going to be able to follow up with the dice. Nahyun is there for support. 5-on-4. Knight landing those shock blasts, though, melting Origen's health bars.
Giants still have a lot of damage if they want to commit to the fight, but it is very risky. Knight, he's alone.
He's up for a moment, but now Giants have been able to back up. Oh, there we go. Right between the uprights. Flash forward, hammer backwards. Nahyun goes golden. Can't realm warp to safety this time. And Nahyun is killed in reply. Origen now have to defend. It is a 4-on-4 for a few seconds longer. Memento has spawned and is now making his way back towards the engage. And on the bottom lane, look at this. Hikyu and Hustlin, they're looking for the tower.
So it's Giants that will overall be the team that comes out ahead. The play from Origen was smart. They realized, look, if we go for a ban right now, we could end up losing the game. So instead of committing to the ban, let's just bait it. Let's allow Sartorius to buy time. Giants will think we're doing it. They will come and face check, and we'll get ourselves a pick. The problem is, Origen couldn't properly decide who they wanted to focus down because you had Memento coming in one way, Flaxish coming in the other. It wasn't as properly set up as they would have liked, but they're still able to get the kill onto Memento. And this is where things start to look promising for Origen because the play itself is great. If you take out the jungler, now you're in a prime position to maybe move back towards the Baron, try and force this objective. But now, just look at your minimap. You can see Ziggs is on his way back towards the fight. Origen, they want to try and get something, maybe some kind of a collapse with Sartorius coming in from the flank. But this is where things start to overcommit from Origen because they think, okay, now we're in a bit of trouble. There's still a lot of damage from Giants, and they end up giving up Nahyun as well as giving up that tier 2 in the bottom lane.
Yeah, it ends up being problematic for Origen. And this is going to be even more problematic. Sartorius will get cut down. Oops. Kill secured by Knight, and all of a sudden, it's a 5-on-4 Mega Inferno Bomb. Forces Pekka and Tabs away. Tidal Wave was used. True Shock Barrage is on cooldown, and Tabs eats another accelerated Shock Blast. Pekka gets sent back to the fountain, and another inhibitor's going to fall. Giants, they may not even need Baron. They're looking at the Nexus turrets.
Giants with a convincing game are looking to try and end things here and now.
Nexus turret 1 and 2 are down. Origen, they are routed. They cannot defend their base, and Giants take down Origen 1-0.
That was a very clean game from Giants. They played out the early game beautifully. They reacted very, very nicely to the early pressure that Wisdom was trying to set up. I felt like the Memento just read Wisdom like a book.
Yeah.
He knew exactly what was going to happen. He knew exactly what the next chapter was coming. Spoilers throughout, as he was just able to prevent all of the early advantages that Origen tried to gain.
As a team, Giants felt like they just understood everything Origen was trying to do.
Yep.
And unfortunately for Origen, that Renekton Elise, the first rotation draft, didn't pay off. I did not see anything from Sartorius' Renekton that made me feel like he was going to be a game-impacting champion, unfortunately.
It was very unfortunate, but nothing but praise I have for Giants because they really did play that exceptionally well. I was very impressed with the way in which they utilized the Ziggs, the way in which they took advantage of power spikes, the pressure they set up in the bottom lane, their response to the gank that happened down bottom. Just fantastic play all throughout from this Giants squad.
And shame on us for forgetting that Ziggs was an ADC as well. Hikyu has played it actually once before coming into today. We were talking about like what champions are available because there was so many banned out.
Yep.
And Hikyu not only steals blue, steals dragon, knocked over almost all of the towers for Giants. Like it felt like such an impactful champion for the Giants squad.
And they tried to take advantage of it. That early levels 1 to 6 before the Ziggs could get his lost chapter, you could see there's actually a pretty big CS advantage for Tabs, for Expected down the bottom lane. But then again, they couldn't use that Elise to try and set up a drive, try and snowball that advantage into anything further.
Now, Verius, in the game, you had a storyline where you were talking about how Giants have struggled sort of individually against some of the other teams in their group. They just seem to outclass Origen on individual as a team level. So, like, what does Origen do? You know, looking at that game, how their game plan didn't get enacted, they appeared to be outclassed. How do Origen come back on stage?
I think that you just draft as simply as possible. Aim to get pushing lanes. You already had the Renekton up top. Don't try and get an early focused jungler. Get more of a scaling one. Just go for a composition that doesn't rely so much on getting an early advantage so that you can just play it out safe and hopefully get those mid-game team fights.
We'll find out what Origen do a little bit later. For now, though, Game 1 is locked into the books. Let's send it over to the analyst desk for a closer look at how it went down.
Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, let's take another look at that game. I mean, Giants coming out with a win. in quite a fast, paced game in the end of all things. Not a lot of kills overall, but there was a lot in this game, back and forth on some of the vision control that we want to touch on. And I want to revisit the discussion that you two were having earlier about how would you coach one of these teams that's further down the standings. And I think that's kind of the way we want to take this segment. So vision is kind of the name of the game?
I think it's vision, and it's also kind of learning how to press your advantages. During the game, probably we were having a discussion, if you play Nami Ezreal into Ziggs Karma, we didn't really like the approach that we're taking in bottom lane.
Yeah, there's just a couple of things that it's kind of, I don't know how to put it. It's like you have to agree to do it together for it to work.
You had a very good way of putting it during the game. You said there were a lot of singular plays, that people aren't working as a team.
Yeah, and this is Crepo probably coaching. So this is combined efforts to make this kind of system work.
But you can see some examples, right? Like Origen, they draft like very heavy on the top side, so they have the Elise Renekton, they can dive there. And then they have a bot lane that is technically supposed to be a lane counter because they pick support second. But if you pick Ezreal Nami, which is like slow sustain and kind of deal with it lane, and you get an elite early, like Pekka had a 20 CS lead, why would you buy a tier? Just buy a Sheen, brute force, and try and all in the Ziggs. Like multiple moments, if you flash forward and exhaust the Ziggs, you can kill and push him out of lane. If you play tier, all you do is you lose super gracefully, but that opens up the map, and we saw eventually Giants kind of start snowballing with the push, with the Ziggs and the Karma.
Yeah, I think to beat the Ziggs, it's why it's so potent in solo queue. It's because it really requires teamwork to kind of beat it. You don't get to make these solo plays. So I think maybe this is part of the, Peke's coming in as support, and there's not like that synergy where they agree on how to play the lane. So they take like the passive approach, where they take the tier and the call, and they slowly lose their turret.
Origen weren't the only team making those singular plays, though. I know you two wanted to highlight Giants and some aspects in this game that could have been better teamwork.
Yeah, definitely they're doing something right here, and it definitely, it looks okay, right? Probably they go in for deep vision, but this can be so much better.
Yeah, this is like how you want to play the map, right? You get pressure, so you go and get deep vision, and this is kind of like the structured play of, competitive. But when you can see here, like they ward really, really shallow, and it's not really maybe a vision control problem, but it's like a trust problem because Karma can't go that deep by herself. So she has to just go in and be like, yo, Graves, I'm gonna deep ward, you gotta come with me. And Graves will go with her. But this is kind of where the bottom tier teams won't have this trust built in, and they'll make these like solo plays where Karma just wards by herself. And then it leaves the map kind of open where it's not all like...
And right after, Hustlin is pathing to the bottom side to kind of go help the Jace here with the empty side stone, so the vision isn't like accelerating. Probably you were also talking about how they're kind of playing around the wrong side of the map. Like we'll see a dragon play here evolve, but right there, if you're Giants, the deep vision on red side actually doesn't really accomplish much because to unlock the team comp right now, you need to get a Jace out of the bottom lane.
I mean, maybe they're playing that like AP Nautilus and they're gonna like one-shot Renekton, so they really want AP Nautilus to be safe, but they're playing the tank Nautilus with all this like beautiful vision that he can't really do much because Renekton will push him anyways. So yeah, it's kind of, you push and want that vision for sure, but now where do you want the vision? Like you need to make sure you know where it is and not just do it because you hear people say it.
And just to summarize for viewers that are maybe like newer to this concept, if you have deep vision, you want to have it in a lane next to where the objective is, right? So like that vision, say it was placed like correctly in the jungle, which would be like the brush above Raptors, a little deeper next to red buff. If you had the faith from your jungler to place it, then you could start attacking tier 1 tower top. But because the matchup is so Renekton favored and he will clear, it's actually on the wrong side of the map. So the vision should actually then move to the bottom side, and you need to get this Jace out of that lane, and that's what the Karma was trying to do. Is like, Oni, I need to help my top laner, but I have no vision, I have no ward. So like, on paper, it looks like, okay, they got some deep vision, but in essence, it was placed wrong because they don't trust each other, and it wasn't placed deep enough, nor placed at the right side. So you feel like you did something right, but you're actually blocking a lot of improvement there for Giants.
Yeah, and that's a lot of those areas of improvements that we're expecting to see more and more from teams as coaching staff becomes more of a thing, and breaking down plays like that. I mean, we've just got the word Origen are going to be on blue side for game 2, so we're going to have to see how Origen can kind of bounce back, see if they can tie up this series, because we actually just wasted our TP, so we're going to have to wait 3.5 minutes before we group up for our next objective. It's going to be game 2 between Origen and Roccat.
Support from Memento. Wisdom repels up into the air. Sartorius tanking up the turret. Now Origen are running for their lives. Round warp to safety. Nahyun saves Wisdom's life. Making their way in. Dragons going low. Making front of them. Stolen! Giants get their first dragon.
Next time, do the Drake. Don't farm camps. Do Drake.
21 minutes and no champion has died yet until Peke gets sniped. Round warp into Hourglass does it safely. Now Nahyun's the target. He gets pulled backwards as the tower goes down. Origen, they're late. They're sloppy. It's messy to the fight. Exus turret 1 and 2 are down Origen. They are routed. They cannot defend their base. And Giants take down Origen 1-0.